Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. This week, we're doing a very simple lesson that focuses on the topic adult transitions, moving from dependency to independency, and the process by which every person traverse in order to get into adulthood. It is a challenge, but it's a journey that, if taken, is really uplifting and encouraging to all who choose to venture in. On yesterday, we did somewhat of a pretest and very simple questions. The journey into adulthood or independence begins at age 18, or the journey begins when landing your first job with benefits, or the journey begins when entering junior high school, or does the journey begin at birth? Now, today, I'd like for us to talk about that adult transition as it relates to single living. Because as we move from one stage of dependency into the next, we become more independent. But if we have not grown properly in the stage prior, then the next stage of life can be pretty complicated. So when we talk about adults transitioning from childhood, infancy into single living, there are a few things that I wanted to point up today that will challenge your thinking. Moving to independency is a journey. Have you thought about this? Every child begins life with a 100% dependency upon others for food, for nurturing, for clothing, for hygiene, for protection. It's a 100% dependency. It can be challenging for those providing those needs to relinquish the level of care being given. You hear people say, well, I'll certainly be glad when my child can cook for themselves, can dress themselves, can groom themselves, can wash their own clothing, can stand up for themselves. But it can be a challenge when adults have done that since prenatal into the teen years, into the young adult years. It can really be a challenge for adults to empower that maturing individual to be independent. It can also be a challenge for those receiving the things being provided to become more independent and begin doing things for themselves. You can often hear younger children saying, I will be so happy when I'm old enough to leave this home. I'll be so happy when I can earn my own money. I'll be so happy when I can buy my own gas, drive my own car, because then I won't have to listen to their mouths. And yet, many times, when the opportunity for independence knocks, and with that opportunity for independence, there comes also responsibility and accountability. That same child who's hoped for, dreamed about independence, will say, well, I didn't realize it was this difficult. And it becomes a challenge for that same individual who has received food, who have received nurturing from home, clothing, everything, protection. It becomes a challenge for them to let it go because that's what they know. That could be true for each one of us. Now, I'd like for you to kind of think with me on this next slide. How eagles learn to fly. We all want to develop eagles. My parents wanted to develop an eagle in me, in my siblings. They wanted strength, and they wanted us to grow up to be independent. But how do we learn that? It is believed that eagles learn to fly within 10 to 12 weeks after birth by hopping around in the nest. I got next, but it should be nest, which is filled with security. The baby eagle learned to flap its wings. The baby eagle jumps from the nest to nearby tree branches. And this is possible by the baby eagle replicating those actions of its parents. See, the baby eagle just does not figure out, well, I'm going to flap my wings and I'm going to jump from nest to nest. There has been modeling inside that nest. And that's how eagles learn to fly, is by observation. And they duplicate, they replicate what they have observed. I personally once observed a bird from the top of the Dulles Marriott Suite Hotel in Herndon, Virginia. I was on the top floor looking out the window one morning, but I observed a bird as it took its young bird and it began to fly upward. And it went up 25, 30 feet. And then it released the young bird from its mouth. Now, I thought, just seeing it, how cruel. This bird takes this young bird up and then let it go. But to my surprise, that young bird began flapping its wings and slowly began to take flight, and with confidence fly without the assistance of its mother. It was a very impressive scene to watch, to see that young infantile bird move into singleness, independency. When we move into living single simply means learning to live responsibly. Living single simply means learning to live in an accountable way. Living single simply means learning to navigate the journey of life. Living single simply means filtering through what you carry with you from the security nest. See, everything in that nest that you observed, everything in that nest that you replicate, that you model, that you hold on to for dear life, may not be good for your singleness. It worked in the nest of security, but it might not be good for your singleness. Therefore, once you branch out on your own, there must become a filtration of everything that took place in that nest. And what do I fly with, and what do I fly without? Have you ever thought about this? If you bring too much baggage with you from the nest, it could be so overwhelming, so heavy, that it could cause you to sink. You will not be able to fly and to soar because you're weighted down by too much of what you observed, too much of what you received in the nest. In the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11, the Apostle Paul said, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. See, in that infantile state, there were things that he did not have to do. He didn't have to feed himself. He didn't have to worry about where his next meal would come from, nor did he have to worry about clothing. He didn't have to worry about where am I going to sleep. If he had good parents, nor did he have to worry about who's going to protect me. So when a child, we act as children. But when we become a man, not married, but adult, living single, we put away childish things. Now, a person can be a man or a woman living single while living in the home of their parents. Listen to what I just said. It doesn't matter the domicile. It matters more, am I living responsibly? Am I living in an accountable way? Am I navigating the journey? Am I filtering? Even if I am under the roof of my primary care providers from childhood, do I say to them now, I'll take care of that. I can handle this. I can be responsible for this. Paul says, when children, we live as children. But one of the indicators of maturity is when we take responsibility. I put away childish things. Come back to class tomorrow, and we will continue the discussion, adulthood transitions into married life. I hope these lessons are a blessing to you. I'll see you back in class again tomorrow. Don't be late.